If we could rewind the tape on modern smartphone history and go back to where it all began, we'd rewind to a small stage in San Francisco in 2007.
We're changing the shape of the future with...
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years.
There's no denying that Apple revolutionized the smartphone.
These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device.
And continued to make leaps year over year.
For 2010, we're going to take the biggest leap since the original iPhone.
But the competition didn't stand still. They worked hard to catch up.
We call it Pixel.
And now, finally in 2020, the futuristic smartphones of our dreams are finally becoming a reality. And Apple, the company that started it all, is about to take a huge leap from the iPhone 8 to the iPhone 9. Huh? Yep, that's really it. When rumors of this new smaller iPhone started circulating around, I think a lot of people's imaginations, mine included, kind of went wild. Is this going to be the iPhone 11 Pro Mini, bezel-less display, Face ID built in, the sort of perfect smaller smartphone that's powerful in a teeny tiny little package? It would have 3 cameras, the same A13 processor, beastly battery life. This looked like, at least in my imagination, as one of the most perfect smartphones. And now as we're getting closer to this rumored March Apple event, this dream of the perfect smaller iPhone, looks like it's just that, a dream. So oftentimes with rumored phones that aren't out, it's hard to describe the aesthetic and the internals of these things that we haven't seen yet. But if you believe the leaks, I can pretty accurately describe the iPhone 9. It's an iPhone 8 with essentially the specs of the iPhone 11. The same A13 processor, 3 gigs of RAM. We're just gonna have one camera, supposed to be the best one, that 12 megapixel wide angle sensor that we've seen kicking around for a while. But it should enable some of the awesome stuff that we have on the iPhone 11 camera, things like night mode, HDR video, and then pretty awesome stabilization. And a pro or a con, and I'm gonna just put this out there, depending on age, Touch ID will be retained. So if you're a fan of Touch ID, it'll be here. We're hoping that maybe Face ID would have made an appearance, but still in that same package of the iPhone 8, it appears to not be the case. To keep the cost down, Apple's going for the older components, but pretty awesomely, the cost is gonna come in at the same starting price as the iPhone SE, $399. At this point, I'm not sure who this phone is for. $400 can get you a used iPhone XR, even a used iPhone 10 in some circumstances. So there's a lot of phones that could be bought for that same $400 price point. Perhaps for folks who just want that smaller form factor, it's a really good option. My dad, for example, was holding on to his iPhone 6S because he didn't want to get rid of Touch ID, and he had that in his head. That I gave him an iPhone 10, he used Face ID, and now he's so happy. But that subset of people who've never used perhaps Face ID, this is the phone perhaps for them. So this event's supposedly happening the end of March with the release date as early as April 3rd. And there was a leak kicking around on TikTok, which should tell you the authenticity of it, that says this is going to be the iPhone 9. I'm gonna say that is not the case. It's an iPhone 8 with a custom shell, so I guess almost the iPhone 9, but it could be an indication of perhaps what the 9 could look like. And judging by how well the iPhone SE sold, this rumored iPhone 9 or iPhone SE 2, depending on what they call it, should also be a huge success. I think it begs the question, is it a success because people really want a smaller phone, or is it a success because people want the cheapest iPhone possible, or more than likely it's a combination of the two? I do think the iPhone 9 name, if that's what they go with, is like a little bit weird. People walk into a store and they're like, should I get the iPhone 11, 11 Pro? And they're like, oh, hey, we got this cheap iPhone 9. It sounds like a phone from 2 years ago, which I guess it kind of is, but it does make it seem like the lesser iPhone. But perhaps it won't matter. Cheap price point, smaller screen size, people will probably still buy them. Generally, we've seen new OS updates, iOS specifically, at Apple's WWDC, which should take place in June, but it's not too early to start thinking and hearing about some of the iOS 14 rumors. But one rumor in particular has me more excited than any iOS update of recent years, and it's that Apple might finally let users replace default apps. So if you want to use Chrome as your default browser, you can do it. A different email app, you can do it. And fingers crossed and praying upstairs, let me replace Siri with Google Now. I'd be a very, very happy man. So Apple's been slowly opening up to more third-party stuff. So we should see the HomePod get native Spotify support, which would be really nice. And if you remember the iOS 13 rumor, it's sort of percolating back to the iOS 14 that this could actually be the OS update where we see actual changes to the OS, actually visual changes that look different, perhaps. This is gonna sound crazy, but maybe if you want to, put an icon on the bottom of a screen, not have to have it pin itself up to the top. I know it sounds wild, but we might finally get that feature on an iPhone. So there's a lot of things that I would want in iOS 14. Some are big, some are small. A smaller call screen would be nice. And perhaps ability to put widgets on the home screen as well. As an audiobook user, I love to be able to push play right from my home screen. These are small things, but they add up to a much easier end user experience. And that's those small customization options are sort of why people tend to leave iOS and go to Android. iPhone's not the only thing expected at this March event. The iPad Pro has been kicking around since 2018. It's due for an update. I love my iPad Pro. It's actually sitting here next to me. It's what I use for notes. It's oftentimes my computer. I think it's probably one of the most perfect products that Apple has ever made. So don't mess it up too much when it comes to an update, and it appears that that's what Apple's doing. It'll get a new processor. It's gonna get the camera set up. It appears from the iPhone 11 Pro. So it should have a time of flight sensor too. Apple's digging in like hard for AR. New keyboard accessories with backlighting on it. But other than that, it's going to look and perform identical, albeit a little bit faster. And if you want to take pictures or do AR stuff on it, be able to do that as well. It doesn't appear like a must-have upgrade though from the outgoing 2018 version. It's oftentimes easy to say like, if they did this, I would upgrade, but I love my iPad Pro so much. I think if there's one area it could improve on, it'd be battery life. Because I'm using it so much, if it would just last a little bit longer, last me a little bit longer on flights, I would be really happy. Give me better battery life, an extra hour or 2 hours, and I would probably consider upgrading and selling the one I've got. But I do think the 2018 iPad Pro is just about perfect. So we were supposed to have seen Apple's trackers, their AirTags, last year, and they obviously didn't make it out in time. This March event is supposed to be their debut. It's kind of a Find My Things. So you go to your Find My app and you could attach them to anything you want, find your tags, locate your stuff. Also be able to ping them to get notifications and noises for where they are. Think of it like Apple's version of Tile. Nothing revolutionary here, but certainly another nice way to find your stuff. Put one in your backpack, put one in your purse, put one in your car, because you're worried about it getting stolen. Anywhere these things are, be able to track them in real time. So if I told you that Apple was going to be coming out with their own wireless charger, first thing you'd think was AirPower, right? Well, supposedly AirPower is making a comeback in some version, and this is coming from Min-Ching Kuo, who's got a pretty good track record for Apple rumors. It's not going to be AirPower as it was announced a few years ago. Supposedly it's a smaller, slimmed down version, doesn't have the same features of AirPower, but charges stuff wirelessly. A sketchy rumor of an AirPods Pro Lite, which doesn't make any sense. And knowing Apple, they'll probably go the iPad route. We'll have AirPods Pro, AirPods Air, and then regular AirPods. But I think if there are sort of an AirPods Pro Lite, it's probably an AirPods 3. We'll see the first generation AirPods go away. This will be a version that probably looks like the regular AirPods with a wireless charging case, just some updated specs and probably bigger battery. I'm still sitting here patiently waiting for that 14-inch MacBook Pro with the new butterfly switches and 10th gen Intel processor. And fingers crossed, dedicated GPU option. That one seems like a sure thing, and it's not a matter of if it's gonna come, but when. So the last March event Apple had was the weird one. It was Apple TV, and they announced the Apple Card. We never got that rumored October event where all these things were supposed to come. So the deck is stacked for a lot of awesome things from Apple very, very soon. I'm excited for the 14-inch MacBook Pro, perhaps more than anything else. But you know that iPhone 9 or iPhone SE is going to sell like crazy.